base that be able to, you know, bring a little bit more calm and soothing, you know, to that situation. Of course, there's not a whole lot you can say to somebody just, you know, lost a loved one or something like that. But I really believe that the spirit that's within him would definitely, you know, help in that situation like that.
That would be his responsibility as a chaplain, you see, which is to say that even though you've got the gun and all those things, you've also been trained to deal with other kinds of issues.
That's correct.
And this is where your gospel, in a real sense, comes into play. Is that what we're saying?
Right. And he hit the nail right on the head, because as a chaplain, when you're on your way to make a death notification, and you know when you knock on that door and you get ready to break that bad news, you're going to change that family's life forever. So mostly it is a ministry of presence, being there. It's almost like once you break that bad news, it's like you shatter that life, and it's just a matter of trying to be there to put the pieces back together. But you don't do it by quoting scriptures and things of that nature, because a lot of times they're in shock. They're not hearing that anyway. So it's a ministry of presence, and that's one of the challenges of understanding the chaplaincy work, even though we use other pastors and clergy, but it's not there to go quote scriptures and try to bring people back through that, because a lot of people already that we go to are already in the faith of something, of some belief, and they already know, but just that presence there offers us peace to them, or just a kind word, I'm so sorry for your loss.
And that's very, very important in terms of how people are able to face the situation that they find themselves in. It might be disagreeable, but it's better to have somebody there who can make those kinds of expressions rather than not to have anybody.
That's correct. Being very compassionate and sensitive, you know, to their needs is very, very important. Very important.
Pastor, what do you think about our young people today? Do you think that somehow they ought to be more involved with ministry or religion or whatever? Do you think that they're...
I think that's very important. And I think one of the things that's missing in our society today is that a lot of our younger people are not being trained up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. You know, a lot of times the parents, that was a generation, and I can't pinpoint exactly when, but there was a generation that said, you know, I'm not going to make my child go to church. I'm not going to do what my parent did, you know, without really applying any real true thought process to what they're saying, because, you know, that same parent required you to go to school, you know, grade school and all through school and stuff like that. So you don't grow up and say, I'm not going to make my children go to school. So why would you say, I'm not going to have make my children go to church? And what's happening is there's a lot of there's a break in the moral fiber, because a lot of people are not being trained up, they're not being taught, they're not having a God consciousness, and you know, you taught a lot of moral stuff within the church setting. You know, you go to school, you get an education. In the church setting, you get a lot of moral stuff that builds and builds and develop your character and stuff. And if you're not, and it's not solely done there, but it should be something that helps enhance what you should be getting at home anyway. But if that element is missing, then you're bringing up a child that has no moral restraint, and then it's not hard for that same individual to have a friend and kill that friend.
Kill a friend without thinking about it.
Absolutely, you know, and that's a lot that's missing, you know. And another thing I would definitely, you know, want Officer Duke to tap into also is the need for more and more African American males to come into it, and not only just males but females as well, but more so African American males to come into the police.
And of course, what we'll do when we come back during the this final segment, Pastor Duke, is to have you to talk about. I think it was said earlier, to recruit. Talk about what can be done, and what you're trying to do, and what your department is trying to do in reference to that. I think that would be appreciated. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Do need to recruit. It would be good to have more diversity within our department, but just my understanding of just a lot local, it's not applying. A lot of the recruits that come in now from out of state, different day, but we need more African American.
You want to talk to North Nashville?
Yeah.
Okay, so just say that it would be better if folks who are being a chaplain in that area happen to live within that area, they can have a better recognition and a better empathy in reference to it. Is that what?
Yeah, what I'm saying is it wouldn't hurt sometime in the community when you're dealing with the community, have the face of the community, a little more of the face of the community.
And you need some more black folks.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what we ought to say. I kind of suspected you. But I think
another thing you touch on too is how people they need to hear coming from a police officer how people should respond when they're stopped.
Okay.
That's good.
Not to be argumentative.
Yeah, survival techniques.
Right.
Even if you feel like you're in the right, it's just a matter of respect and politeness.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. 30. And so we want to start with you, Pastor Duke.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Kay Walker and Chaplain J. Duke. And Chaplain Duke, let's see if we can end this final segment by having you to talk about some efforts on the part of the Metropolitan Police Department in terms of recruitment and in terms of diversity, in terms of all of those things that you believe to be necessary in order to help you improve what you're doing and help improve the city in entirety.
Okay. Well, in the community, listening at some of the people within the church talking, they would like to see more black officers in the community going through the police academy, and I think it would be very helpful if pastors would mention to their young adults that's growing up that may want to be a police officer as a profession, which it is a good profession. I've been doing it pretty much over half my life now, and I can't think of nothing more rewarding from being a police officer. But I believe the police department, if churches would open up and let recruitment go in and talk to their young people to give some insights on the police department. Of course, now some of the criteria you have to have either some college, at least 60 credited hours, college degree, military background, have held a job for a certain length of time. So the police department, they do recruit. They about twice a year, they've run classes through. And I know a lot of the community people, even within the church, have said they would love to see more blacks at the graduations.
Very good. And so what you're saying to ministers this morning in a real sense is that if there's somebody in your congregation, and I think ministers can generally determine the individuals that they would probably like to become in, would like to send to you. But all they would have to do is to sort of talk to those individuals and to allow them to get in touch with individuals like you, and then they can perhaps start off in terms of finding out the qualifications and things that are necessary, so that when we talk about policing, we're not always talking about only African Americans doing the policing. And so, do you think that that's an important thing that we can
I think so. I think you find ways to attract the African American male to the police department. And one of the ways I think is to get rid of the image that all police officers are bad, and in reality they're not. I interact with a lot of police officers where I work at Room in the Inn, because they're constantly bringing people in that are homeless and intoxicated. They bring them in down there, and I interact with many Metropolitan Nashville Police Department officers, and I mean I found a lot of them very easy to get along with. I mean, I found some with some attitudes too, but at the same time, you know, we got to break this bad guy stigma and stuff like that, and realize police officers, they're people too. They got families and stuff, and then when they're out there doing their job, you know, they got to be cautious in terms of when they approach somebody and not knowing what to expect when they're making that approach and stuff like that. So, and it's important. I think Officer Duke was saying something also about some of the criteria. You know, if that criteria could be tweaked a little bit, you know, in terms of the 60 college hours and credits and hours like that, and incorporate that particular aspect into the academy training, I think it maybe attract more people, because sometimes I think a lot of people launch off in a career in a pursuit of a degree. They may not pull short at that point and then come into the academy and they may continue on the course they're on. But I think if you could incorporate that into the training aspect,
prior knowledge and prior training that they might have.
Take desire. You know, somebody, because I was looking at a picture of Officer Duke when he was 14 years old, and he had a desire. He was delivering papers, but he had a desire to be a police officer, and he pursued it. You know, I don't know if the criteria was probably different.
Back when I came on, you just needed a high school diploma.
Yeah.
When I came on.
Well, what do you find now, Chaplain Duke, in reference to recruitment? Do you find that there are a large pool of African American males that can, well, not only African American males, but I think that we have to admit that this is a real situation in reference to what we're talking about here. Do you find that there's a large number of African American males who would like to do what you're doing, or what?
I don't have any statistics now on that. Some years back, I did work in background and recruitment, and they used to get a good pool of them, but that's been back in the early 90s.
And so for the most part, there are not that many efforts to try to increase the number of African Americans in the police academy?
I don't know for sure how recruitment do, but I know they do job fairs and they go different places. They send background and recruitment officers different places, schools, colleges, trying to recruit. And then sometimes it's by word of mouth. You know, sometimes there have been some that have been hired that have even talked to me, and I've told them to pursue it, that it is a good career. And it's sort of like what Pastor Walker was saying, sometimes it's that stigma that holds some back, because when an incident happens, it get blown sometimes, you know, within the media, some things, because you got to have some good and bad in everything. But everybody's not bad.
The overwhelming of officers, police officers, individuals that are involved in that are really involved because they do have that kind of compassion.
They care and want to help.
Desire to help and whatever. And even though there might be a few bad apples here and there, more than likely they were good apples when they started off. And people can become, you know, sort of cynical in reference to what they do. But for the most part, you think that the individuals that you counsel with and that you work with are all individuals that have the welfare of all peoples in reference to what they do. Would that be a good statement?
I would say so. And two, within the police department, there are some mechanisms that's been put in place to try to help identify, you know, if someone is going wrong and everything.
And so they are. The police department is aware of all of the controversy in reference to what they do, and so you believe that the Metropolitan Police Department is working hard and trying to deal with some of those issues.
Right, because some of the things that has happened in other cities and everything, well, we say, well, it could happen to Nashville, but there are some things that have been put in place to try to safeguard, even bringing clergy and getting them involved, and keeping them in the know of some of the things that's happening to try to keep, you know, things, you know, on a calm here in Nashville.
And so the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department is a large department.
It is a large department.
It's a very large department. And there are many opportunities that individuals, and probably in many instances, a lot of folks probably never thought about. Well, would you advise individuals who have perhaps been involved in the military, for example, have been in service and good way out, you know, not kicked out of service, but, you know, to become involved? That would be something.
A lot of the recruitment pool has come from people with prior military experience. And so they do hire a lot that's just, you know, coming out from the military.
And so, Pastor, you believe that the more knowledge that we have in reference to what is going on in the police department and the more relationships that we create between the police department and the community and et cetera, is helpful for the entire city?
I would think so. I would think, Dr. Haney, that if the Metropolitan Police Department would create more of a dialogue between the communities that they're policing, they'll have a better response, especially in terms of solving cases and stuff like that. Because if the people can trust, if people got a level of trust in someone, then they'll open up to someone. But if I got this stigma attached, that it's us against them, then it's gonna be harder to get answers, to questions that people got the answers to. People, little Johnny gets killed. Somebody know who killed little Johnny, but they just won't speak up and tell it. But I think if we had more positive interaction between the police department and the community, I think we could get the answers to who killed little Johnny, in situations like that. And you can imagine, I'm sure there's got to be a high stress job.
It has to be.
And I think a ministry-minded mindset, man, will help, level some of that off, because, you got a source you can go to, you can get some peace out of that situation.
Right. I was going to say that's a good point. Communication is the key. And one of the things that the police department do, they offer every so often what is known as the Citizens Police Academy. And it kind of help educate the public, those who get involved in that, to see the dynamics of the workings of the police department.
Very good. And of course, let me thank the two of you, Pastor, especially you, for bringing Chaplain Duke by to talk with us this morning. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
You good? Check. 1, 2, 2. Testing. 1, 2. Getting anything off of it? Hello? Hello? He might have had it pinched with all that crap he had.
Hey. Oh yeah.
That's us, right?
Yeah. What I'd like for us to do is to look at the whole process that led to the inauguration of Negro History Month. Negro History Month, and then talk about the transition to Black History Month. And on all the controversy surrounding that, you know, started out as Negro History Week with Carter G. Woodson in 1926. But before that, he started the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, 1915. 1916, the Negro History Journal, and then Negro History Week in 1926, which was 90 years ago. But we want to look at the transition to Black History Month, which interestingly enough occurred at your alma mater in 1969 when Black United Students came up with this idea that we should have a Black History Month. And in 1970, they actually celebrated the first Black History Month. But it wasn't until 1976, the bicentennial of this nation, that the government officially recognized Black History Month. That was during the term of Gerald Ford. So I want to talk about this whole process that led from Negro History Week to Black History Month. And then talk about whether or not it's celebrated not only in this country, but in Britain and in Canada. It's not simply a national celebration. To talk about that to some extent, and then look at the controversy surrounding it. There are so many who feel that you don't celebrate Black History Month as a separate component of American history. Because we are part of it. But the problem is that we've been a neglected part of it.
So been a sub-part of
it
for a long time.
Exactly. So these are the process that led from Negro History Week to Black History Month, and look at how Black History Month is celebrated and where we should go from here. And at that point, I want to talk not only about making Black history a part of the classroom, of the educational curricula, but also we need to start teaching it in family and in our religious institutions.
Very good.
So this is where I want to go from here.
Okay, that sounds good.
Would you put that over on the table there? Yeah.
See if I can get back up in here. What did I say this was? Title.
Black History Month in the 21st century or something.
African American history at the 21st century.
Exactly.
21st century.
And that's a very good topic.
African American history at the 21st century.
Very good topic here. Yeah, Kent State is your alma mater, as I recall. August Meyer,
August Meyer, that's what I thought about him.
You worked with one of the best. Is he still alive?
No, I think he died in 90, I think about 206 or something.
Okay, I know Elliot Rudrick had ridden a lot with him. He died.
From Plantation to Ghetto.
He had a tragic death.
Yeah, he did. I
committed suicide, I think.
Oh, he did?
Yes, Elliot Rudrick, yeah. Yeah, but you studied with the best, Doc.
Well, that was I met them.
You and Clark, what's her name? Darlene Clark. Yeah, Clark Hines.
How is she? You know about it? I know you.
Yeah, I heard she's at Northwestern now.
Is she still there now?
Yeah.
Well, she ought to be about ready to retire, man, because she's as old as I am.
Yeah, she was at Michigan State.
Okay.
But you, man, you have a background that's unbelievable, man.
I met August Meyer at Ohio University back in 1968.
Did
I
you?
my master's at Ohio University.
Okay.
And when I went to Ohio University, I met him there at a conference. He was getting ready to organize
Yes,
the
yeah.
PhD program at Kent State.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he invited me to come there, and I became his first student. I'm his first PhD student.
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
Man.
African Negro.
Oh,
from
man.
Plantation to Ghetto and all the.
Oh, he did so much work.
Yeah, he made us read that stuff.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know,
He was a pivotal figure
yeah, he was.
in the advancement of African American religious studies.
Yeah, he was responsible for me being down here at Vanderbilt.
Was he?
Yeah, you know, when I finished there in '71, he said, you know, I want you to go to, send me out to Iowa. And I went out there and I visited out there, and then we came back and he said, I want to send you to Vanderbilt University.
To Vanderbilt.
That's right.
Yeah.
In '72, Charles, do you remember Charles Dalzell? You remember Charles Dalzell?
I remember that name,
Yeah, he was
yeah.
there. And Dalzell and Winters, Don Winters.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Okay,
Oh, yes.
Don Winters.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Jack Vogeley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was a dean for a
Yeah,
while
that's right.
there when, yeah. And so
Man,
I knew all those folks.
Those kinds of connections are just amazing.
Yeah, he had all kinds of connections, man. He just told me, he said, where do you want to go? And I said, and then he sent me out to, he wanted to send me to Temple.
Okay.
Yeah, he wanted to send me to Temple, but then Vanderbilt was another choice. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is African American history at the 21st century. And we have to talk about the African American history experience at the 21st century, Dr. Lewis Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin was a professor at Vanderbilt University for a long time, and so Dr. Baldwin, we're just glad to have you with us this morning.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be back.
Well, I mean, you bring us so much information.
And you know, we've
and you've
talked
talked
for a
about
number
so
of years.
many things, I think, for so many years. But in case there might be some individuals in this audience that might not know Dr. Lewis Baldwin. Yeah. Let's have you, Dr. Baldwin, to give us some information in reference to your background, your education, and some of your experiences during this first segment. And then when we come back after this first commercial break, we'll get into African American history at the 21st century.
That's right. Well, I'm a native of Camden, Alabama, known as the Alabama Black Belt. I grew up there in the late 40s and 50s. I attended the segregated Jim Crow schools in rural Alabama. Graduated from Camden Academy High School in 1967. And from there, I matriculated at Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. Received a BA degree in history in 1971. From there, I matriculated at Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York, received the MA degree in 1973 and the Master of Divinity degree in 1975. From there to Northwestern University, where I received the PhD in American Christianity in 1980. And since that time, I've actually been writing a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement. That has been my primary focus in terms of my scholarship, in terms of my research. I taught at Vanderbilt University from 1984 to 2013, 29 years. Before that, I taught at Worcester College in Ohio, Colgate University in New York. So we're talking here about 35 years of teaching, 35 years of being involved in research.
Writing books.
And that's right, that's right. And currently I've written, I guess, about 7 books, and I've co-edited 2, and I've edited 2, and I've co-authored several volumes. So we're talking here about 14 works on African American religious history and culture, and most of those works, of course, are on Martin Luther King Jr.
You know, Dr. Baldwin, you've got so much information dealing with Dr. Martin Luther King as well as the African American history experience itself.
Right. Yes,
because you can't write 14 books dealing with the African American experience for the most part, even though you highlighted Dr. King without knowing something about the African American experience.
That's right.
And what we'd like to do today is to look at the establishment of the African American history experience in a formal sense, you see. And so let's start off by having you to give us some preliminary statements in reference to the African American history experience.
Yes, I think when you look at African American History Month, you have to first begin with a figure like Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson was born in 1875 in Virginia. He was the son of slaves. And he decided, after receiving a degree at University of Chicago, he got his MA degree from the University of Chicago and got his PhD from Harvard University, I think, in 1912. And Carter Woodson had this idea that the nation had to recognize the contributions, the achievements of African Americans to American culture, American history. So in 1915, he started the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. A year later, 1916, Carter Woodson started what? The Journal of Negro History. And in 1926, a decade later, he started Negro History Week. And Negro History Week was actually a precursor to what we call Black History Month today. Negro History Week was started in 1926. 1929, it had become a celebration in many of the states in which there was a large population of blacks. It wasn't really until 1969 that the idea of Black History Month came up. And that, of course, was with Black United Students at Kent University, your alma mater, in 1969. In 1970, the students at Kent State actually celebrated the first Black History Month, and in 1976, the bicentennial.
Very good. And let's take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Because if it was at Kent State, August Meyer was involved.
That's right.
And if August Meyer was involved, then I was involved.
And probably Elliot Rudrick.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly it. You know, he was down at Fisk. You know that, don't you?
I had heard about that.
Yeah, well, he was, one reason he sent me to Vanderbilt was that when he came to Fisk, you know, back in, I guess it must have been the 30s. When he came to Fisk, he was this great researcher, and he wanted to do some research, but they wouldn't let him in at Vanderbilt University. They wouldn't let him in the library over there. And so that's why he had a real hard feeling against Vanderbilt University. And that's what he said. He said, I'm going to sit you down because I had an afro with that thing. Okay, very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Louis Baldwin, and the issue is African-American history at the 21st century. Dr. Baldwin, let's see if we can pick up during this second segment dealing with the establishment of African-American history, week, month, and et cetera, as you were indicating before the first commercial break.
Yes, and when the commercial break came, I was really talking about the transition from Negro History Week to Black History Month. And of course that occurred in 1969 with Black United Students at Kent University. They first proposed that Negro History Week be expanded to Black History Month. That was in 1969. And in 1970, the Black United Students at Kent University actually held the first Black History Month celebration.
I was there.
Yes, and it was an important, I think, event in terms of this transition from Negro History Week to Black History Month. And in 1970, interestingly enough, Black United Students at Kent University held the very first Black History Month celebration. And it wasn't until 1976, with the celebration of the bicentennial, that the federal government officially recognized Black History Month. And at that time, of course, Gerald Ford was president. So we're talking about a process that began in 1915 with Carter G. Woodson and the establishment of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, a process that began there in 1915 and extended up to 1976 when you get the first recognition by the federal government of a Negro History Month. And since that time, of course, we've been celebrating Black History Month. And now, in 2016, we're talking about 40 years from 1976 up to 2016.
And that's a long period in terms of studying this particular subject, as well as those individuals who made great contributions to African-American history during the period.
Exactly. You're really pointing to the reasons why Woodson started Negro History Week in the first place. He never lived to see Black History Month because he died in 1950. But Woodson was very interested in presenting before the nation and the world a list of the achievements, of the contributions of African Americans to national history and culture, but also to world history and culture. He felt that this was very important in the struggle against racism, because as you well know, one of the arguments of white supremacists in the 1920s and 30s was that blacks had not contributed anything to national history and culture, national artistic life, world history. So Woodson wanted to say, hey, African Americans have been great achievers. And he felt that that was important not only in the struggle against racism, but he felt that that was important in dealing with the problems of black self-esteem. That blacks had to understand that they had been important contributors, achievers in American historical life, American cultural life. And Woodson said, hey, in order to get this message across, we need a Negro History Week, and of course later, as I said, it became Black History Month.
And in a real sense, Dr. Baldwin, I think we might say that your career, in a real sense, sort of epitomizes what Carter G. Woodson was trying to achieve, which is to say that he wanted folks to be knowledgeable in reference to the African-American experience.
Yes.
And I think when you think in terms of your education, the first books you published, and et cetera, this was all added fuel to the kind of information that he felt that we ought to be preserving and we ought to be writing and et cetera.
Exactly.
So you in a real sense, formed the sort of a core
That's right.
in terms of what Carter G. Woodson and others were concerned about. And I think you mentioned the Journal of Negro History and et cetera, that was always a medium whereby people like you and me and others could be reached and et cetera. And so it has a long, and I think that in a real sense you played a significant role in helping to establish the scholarly aspect, because it has to be recognized that while black folks might have been involved in helping to establish this organization, not many of us produced the kind of resources that you produced, 20 odd books and et cetera, dealing with Dr. King and et cetera. That's a bulwark.
That's right, that's right. But it all started with Woodson and people like W.E.B. Du Bois, because they were publishing a lot. Not only did Woodson call for a Negro History Week, if you look at the list of publications that he provided. He wrote a book on the history of the Negro Church. He wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. He wrote a book on Negro orators and their orations. He wrote a book on African American slaves, on free African Americans during the period of slavery. So Woodson felt that African American history had to become a part of the classroom experience. It had to become a part of the educational curricula of this nation. So he pioneered in that regard, not only Woodson, but Du Bois, as I said. So I view myself and others who are writing today as standing in the tradition of these strong men.
And having read most of the information that Woodson and Du Bois, the African slave trade and et cetera, who can forget that kind of information that in a real sense inspired us all to become interested in the African experience and to know that there was a connection between Africa and the United States, even though at the time, Dr. Baldwin, a lot of folks didn't want to talk about that kind of connection. Talk about that. I mean, how did Africa fare in a real sense in reference to?
I think the importance of the work, the scholarship of people like Woodson and Du Bois is that they established the point that Africa had been a force in the shaping of world civilization. That from the very beginnings, Africa was involved, that Africa contributed to the history of the world, that Africa had been a force in the shaping of the world, of world civilization. And of course, Woodson and Du Bois pioneered in that regard. So scholars like myself and others, Sterling Stuckey, others who are writing today, are actually building on what yourself, with the kind of work you've done with African American history, we are actually building on what people like Carter Woodson and W.B. Du Bois.
So we're going to take this commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Did you know that?
I knew that. I heard the name.
Yeah, well, he was the chairman of the history department over at Tennessee State University when I went. As a matter of fact, he got me from Over at Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh man,
He's no longer alive.
No, I think he died. Oh, I guess about 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, he retired from Tennessee State University, went to North Carolina, and worked there for a while. But
yeah, I've heard that name.
Yeah, he was the chairman of the history department at Tennessee State University. And see, what happened was that during the period of separation, Vanderbilt didn't have any Africans on the staff over there. And so he was the first person to go from Tennessee State University, where he was the chairman, to go over to Vanderbilt and teach a course over there during the summer and et cetera. And so when I came, I, in a real sense, took the chair. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for the morning. We're talking to Dr. Louis Baldwin, and the issue is African-American history at the 21st century. Now, Dr. Baldwin, during this last segment, let's see if we can give you free rein in a real sense to sort of pull us in during this last 10 minutes in reference to some of the things that we ought to know about what we're talking about.
Yes, when we talk about the 21st century, we have to take into account the kind of controversy surrounding this celebration of Black History Month. There are many in our society, primarily in the white community, who feel that Black history is a part of American history. So why designate a month each year, February in this case, to the special celebration of a particular people? But you know, Black history has been neglected as a part of American history. Certainly it's a part of American history, but it's a neglected part of American history.
Almost an unknown part of it until Carter was
largely unknown, not only, even among African Americans, and certainly among white Americans and other Americans of other ethnic backgrounds. Now, Carter Woodson himself envisioned a time, or he hoped for a time, when Black History Month celebrations wouldn't be necessary. He said that. But he said, given the view that most Americans have of African Americans, stereotypical images of Black Americans, distorted views of their roles in American history and American culture and the shaping of American civilization, given that, we need Black History Month celebrations. Or as Carter Woodson would say, Negro History Week celebrations. So Woodson himself hoped for a time when that would not be needed, but he felt that that would only come when blacks had full human rights in America, and then we could celebrate American history as opposed to focusing specifically on the history of African American people during Negro History Month. Hopefully we get to that point, but we are not yet there. Now, the other point I would like to make has to do with where we go from here in terms of our celebration of Black History Month. We know that it has been, Black history has been integrated into the classroom experiences of students and from the kindergarten level on up to college, and we know that it is a part of the educational curricula in many of our colleges and universities and divinity schools and seminaries. But where we go from here, I think, is that we need to make it a part also of our family structure. In the early days when Woodson was coming up with this idea for Negro History Week, Black history was taught in the context of family life, around the dinner table. Kids learned about Black history. We need to go back to that because I think the family needs to be regarded as an educational agency. So we need to integrate Black history into our family life and also into our religious institutions, our churches, our mosques, so that our young people will understand what happened in the time of Woodson, for an example, in the 1920s, what happened with the civil rights movement, what is happening today in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and our efforts to advance black rights, black freedom to another level.
Just a wider range of knowledge and information about the African experience.
Exactly.
Because the African American experience has been different from any other experience in America.
Exactly. It is a unique experience. And I think Carter Woodson recognized that. And this is why he started Negro History Week. And this is why we celebrate Black History Month today. We're talking about a unique experience of people who have experienced oppression in a unique way, and are people who are struggling for freedom in a unique way. And that continues, of course, in the 21st century.
And of course, if you took that particular aspect out of American history, you would really have a different American history. What would American history be without the existence of the African in America, the African experience in America? There would have been no slavery. That would be, and some of the great issues that we're talking about today, you know, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment.
Blacks have been a part of every major turning point in American history. We've contributed so much to the artistic life of the nation, to the agricultural life of the nation, to the spiritual life of the nation. And I think Carter G. Woodson was right. Celebrating black history, affirming black history, accepting black history is essential not only to the spiritual, psychological, political survival of black people, it's essential to the spiritual, the psychological, and the intellectual survival of the nation, I think.
And so on at the end of this century, I think we can still hope for there being some element dealing with the African American experience, because this is an experience that is going to continue. No matter how integrated the African become within American society, there will always be that aspect that of his story that has to be told.
Exactly, and we should not treat it as a footnote to American history. And that's been the problem, I think, with so much of our history of America, is that blacks are treated as a footnote, that you get distorted and stereotypical images of blacks in that history. And I think we need to get beyond that. And once we get beyond that, then we can celebrate American history.
We could have an American history department instead of an African American history department, and et cetera. But Dr. Baldwin, I believe that as a representative in a real sense of one scholarly aspect of the African American experience, because in a real sense, you really follow Carter G. Woodson and W.E.B. Du Bois and others in terms of the kind of work that you're doing and the kind of writing that you're doing. And I think that as we were inspired by the African slave trade or by Woodson's book, Education of the Negro, and et cetera, a large number of other young individuals that are coming along today, when they look at Martin Luther King, are inspired by some of the things that you've said and some of the things that you've written.
And so, also you.
And I think that we've all had some hand in helping to broaden the whole understanding of what the African American experience has been
all about. Exactly. And I think you're quite right at that. You, myself, so many others who are making these great contributions today to the understanding of black history and black culture. We are all a part of the legacy of Carter G. Woodson and W.E.B. Du Bois.
That's right.
We're standing on their shoulders. We're advancing the kind of scholarship that they were interested in pursuing and getting across not only to the nation but to the world.
What would they have done and what achievements would they have made had they had at their disposal the tools that we have to work with today?
I wouldn't venture to make an assessment of that. I think if they had exposure to the kind of resources that we have today, their contributions would have been endless.
They would have
been endless. But we have to look to them as pioneers.
Pioneers, that's right.
And look at ourselves as picking up the torch and carrying it forward.
And I'm glad to say that I know Dr. Baldwin.
And I'm glad to say that I know
tell
Dr.
people all
James
the time,
Haney.
you know, that I know Dr. Baldwin. You know, he's written all those books
Yes,
about the African experience that has
and
had
I
all
know
kinds.
Dr. James Haney.
I knew you before your work before I knew you. And so, Dr. Baldwin, and I say that you've done so much in terms of contributing to this particular show, and I think I've said it on many occasions. It goes back for the last 25 or 30 years. You've contributed to this show as much as you've contributed to the writing of the books, because most of the time when you write the book, we find out about it on this show, even though you're circulated worldwide in a real sense.
Thank you so much.
It gives us sort of a special opportunity and a special privilege.
And what you're doing is equally
tie
important.
into all of these things. And so I want to thank you for coming by and sharing this information with our audience this morning, because I know that it's very, very important that we be able to do so. And I know that my granddaughter has been encouraged and influenced by, she knows Dr. Baldwin,
thank you
Dr.
so
Allen,
much.
and all the rest of those folks. And I want to thank you, and let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and good morning.
family, and community. And I'll take each of those sections.
Okay.
First section I deal with.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Kwanzaa, and we have with us to talk about the African-American experience of Kwanzaa, Dr. Al-Hadid, a longtime guest of this particular show and a person who is not unfamiliar with my audience this morning, Dr. Al-Hadid, and let me welcome you to the show this morning and to tell you how delighted we are to have you here with us once again. You've been with us a number of occasions and you've talked about so many different topics dealing with the African-American experience, well, with the African within the world in a real sense, and now you're going to talk about Kwanzaa. Yeah. Before we get started with that, Dr. Al-Hadid, let's have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences, and then by the end of that part, then you can mention something about Kwanzaa, and then we'll start that second segment dealing with the various aspects of that situation as far as you're concerned.
Well, I was born in what I might call apartheid Alabama, specifically in Montgomery, which, as you know, was the historic cradle of the Confederacy. And I came of age between the Montgomery bus boycott and the Selma to Montgomery March, which was 1955, 1965. Attended George Washington Carver High School, and then I went to Alabama State University, where I received my bachelor's in sociology and psychology. I left the Deep South and then went out on the West Coast to University of California, Santa Barbara. There I received my doctorate in sociology, with a strong emphasis in social psychology and political philosophy. Traveled to Africa and made the pilgrimage to Mecca in 1970, and then I came back to the South and started teaching at Tennessee State University, and just recently retired from Tennessee State after 35 years of service there, and so I'm pretty much a retired college professor. I was the founder of the Africana Studies Department there in 1994. And also I created a forum which was called the Great Debate, and also the Great Debate Honor Society. You
know, Dr. Al-Hadid, when we talk about Kwanzaa, it's something that many of our audience might not be familiar with. And so let's give a definition in terms of Kwanzaa and the parts that you'd like to talk about this morning.
Well, Kwanzaa is a very distinct African-American holiday. It is celebrated between December 26th and January 1st. Kwanzaa, from the Kiswahili literally means first, but as it was conceived by Maulana Karenga, Kwanzaa is a celebration of culture, family, and community, which is a little different from African American History Month, which celebrates primarily history of great individuals, great events, and great movements. But this puts a strong accent on culture in the sense that you want to reestablish the culture of African Americans and connect the culture, with the African continent. Each of the days of Kwanzaa, December 26th through January 1st, there's an attempt to lift up and celebrate one of the principles or values of the traditional African value system, which we call the Nguzo Saba. For example, on December 26th, the celebration is of the principle of umoja, which is unity. And on the 27th, we celebrate Kujichagulia, self-determination. And the 28th, we celebrate Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. The 29th, we celebrate Ujamaa, cooperative economics. And then on the 30th, we celebrate Nia, which is purpose. December 31st, Kaumba, creativity. And then January 1st, Imani, which is faith. And the way Maulana Karenga put this together was he did a survey of a number of traditional African societies. And what he discovered was that at certain times during the year, there was a harvest season. And it was an ingathering of people in the village, and then they would celebrate what they had achieved during the year. They would be thankful for having a bountiful harvest, or even grateful if they didn't have a bountiful harvest. And out of that, he was able to extract these values that are peculiar to all African societies, whether you're talking about the Zulu in Southern Africa, or the Yoruba in West Africa, or the Berbers in North Africa. They all share this same value system, which is called the Nguzo Saba.
And we're going to take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Yeah.
And so this is this is 8 minutes. This is an 8-minute segment.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the volume up a little.
Right.
How's the weather out there now?
Well, there's, I guess it's probably around 40.
Oh, 40. It's nice. It's cool.
Yeah, it's above freezing, but not too much above it. It's not really cold. I wore my jacket just in case.
Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Al Hadid, and he's given us some information in reference to